Okay.
What's up, y'all? This is Diva, delivered, inspired, victorious, anointed. I'm here with my hoodlums, and today we're going to do a little talking because, see, we are opinionated and we want to share our opinions with you. And I want to discuss the dissertation of A.D. Carson, which was actually an album, a hip hop album, 34 tracks. And A.D. Carson completed a 34-song album he called Owning My Masters, The Rhetorics of Rhymes and Revolutions. If that sounds like an unusual title for a hip hop record, keep in mind that the album also served as his doctoral dissertation. So Carson received his PhD in rhetorics, communication, and information design from Clemson University in May of 2017. His unconventional project made headlines around the world, and the University of Virginia's music department took notice. So he then became an assistant professor of hip hop and the global South. But this is something that I did not know. I didn't know that Clemson is actually on the grounds of a former plantation that was owned by a pro-slavery statesman, John C. Calhoun. And this is a quote from Carson. He says, John C. Calhoun's house is open 7 days a week at the center of the campus. The more that I found myself speaking up and speaking out about the way the history and current circumstances were intertwined there in the layout of the place and the ways that people interact with one another, the more I felt that people were not listening to my voice. And I think that I know that I had um, a PWI experience. And after going to North Carolina Central when I was 18, and then when I went back to school, I went to a PWI, and it was really, I call it the invisibilization of people of color, because they tell you that it's diverse. They tell you, they give you the brochure and you see all kinds of people. But when you get to the campus, you realize that their diversity only extends to the age of their shiny little pamphlet. Now, have either of you had like a PWI experience?
No. No.
No.
I've always I went to South Carolina State University, which is a historically black college, and so I've always been um, around people that looked like me.
Mhm.
You know, not only in the brochures, but I saw them day to day in classrooms, as professors, among my peers. We were always, among each other.
Yeah. What about you, Pia?
I had a PWI experience. Um, when I was in high school, I was involved with Upward Bound.
Mhm.
And at that time, the director, we spent a lot of time specifically at HBCUs.
Mhm.
And my dream school when I was in high school was to go to Spelman.
Mhm.
And my parents would not allow me to go out of state my first 4 years.
Mhm.
The only two HBCUs that I was like dead set about was either Spelman or Xavier, because at that time I was really interested in pre-med,
Mhm.
and Xavier had a very high percentage rate of medical school acceptance, because I was very keen on going to a school that was or had a good percentage or concentration in the area I wanted to study.
Mhm.
So once my parents told me I couldn't go out of state, that kind of dashed my dreams, because there wasn't any other HBCUs that I was interested in attending. My uncle worked at Fayetteville State for years, so
Mhm.
I kind of grew up at Fayetteville State, being around him. So that was like a second home for me.
Mhm.
The flip side to that coin was I felt like HBCUs got crammed down my throat
Mhm.
in a way that was negative and kind of turned me away.
Mhm.
A lot of people that I met from HBCUs came off very arrogant,
Mhm.
as if you didn't go to a HBCU, you were less than.
Mhm.
And it kind of just really skewed my view. Even graduates of HBCUs, their convincing of trying to get me to go to a HBCU was always based on homecoming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And their thing was like, okay, where are you going to school? Because outside of Xavier and Spelman, the only other school I was thinking about was Duke.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told people that, they were like, well, what kind of homecoming are you going to have? And I'm just like, homecoming is 1 week.
Yeah.
Like I'm choosing a school that I'm going to feel comfortable being at for 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I come visit your homecoming, but I'm not choosing my school based on a homecoming. But while I was at UNC Charlotte, because ultimately that's where I went, because Duke waitlisted me. And mama told me come August, I had to get out of her house and find somewhere to go. So I ended up going to UNC Charlotte, but I still had a very good experience. It was very diverse, but there was a family within the Black Student Union and the Black organizations on campus. So I never felt like I'm just in this sea of white and they don't see me. The Black Student Union was the HBCU of my school. So I still felt at home. And then of course, Johnson C. Smith was down the street. So we went there. We could go to Greensboro if we wanted to go to A&T, whatever. And of course, when I went home, I was always at Fayetteville State. So I feel like in a way, I've still had the best of the both worlds.
Yeah. Well, see, when I went back to school, I was in my 40s. And so I was shocked because I really believed that the younger kids were not so prejudiced and things like that. But that invisibilization, yeah, they like them little girls. I was living in the quad, right? And these little girls was trying to like freeze me out of my room, but they didn't know that I had hot flashes, honey. So I needed that air conditioner to be cold. You know what I'm saying? And just like little things, just little mean things that they would say and do. And so I was just like, I don't know who they think they're dealing with, but I waited a long time to come back to school and they ain't gonna bother me. And I did my thing. I graduated. And then when I went to Hood, and it was like night and day, the family atmosphere, how the faculty and staff care about you and how, we had the lunch together and all that. And so it was the thing that kind of changed everything for me, because UNCW was, it was UNCW, and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah, I've heard some stories about UNCW.
Yeah, well, you know what the nickname of UNCW is? It's UNC White. That's the nickname of the school. And
I've seen quite a few African American students from my area that went there that ultimately ended up transferring somewhere else because of that very experience that you speak of.
Yeah, and I think because I was older and I knew who I was, so
right.
They couldn't mess with me because my minor was creative writing, and I had a couple of professors who were trying to homogenize and take all the color and flavor out of my poetry. And I was like, nah, boo, we ain't finna do that. And I just did my stuff the way I did it. And they came around. I had one professor that told me, I can guarantee you that in a couple of months, nobody will ever even remember the poem that you just read. And I made sure that for the rest of the semester, every poem that I wrote built on that particular poem. And by the end of the semester, she was so impressed and kind of changed her mind. But I wasn't doing it to change her mind. I was doing it to change my mind, because when you go through something like that and you believe that, what you do is important and you're good at what you do, and you have somebody who, kind of tears you down, it's difficult. So even at the age of 40, I think I was like 48, 49, something like that, it still kind of shook me a little bit, but I was determined, because I had already been through a whole lot of stuff anyway. And I was determined that wasn't no little old woman who looked like a fairy, looked like she ought to have some wings floating around in the woods, scare me. So, but anyway.
What was your, were you surprised with what happened this year with UNCW. I can't remember that professor's name. Ultimately was found dead in his
Yes,
home, but was very controversial.
yes,
And for years, there were a lot of complaints against that professor for sexist comments,
yeah.
racist type of commentary that a lot of the students of color were like pushing to like, y'all need to do something about him.
And he really used his personal social media accounts, and he wrote articles and stuff like that, and he would name students names and
Wow.
really just disparage anybody who did not think the way he thought. He was of course a conservative and
Right.
all of that, so yeah, it was surprising when he was found dead. I don't know if anybody has said anything about that, if there's been any um any resolution as to what happened. But yeah, there were a couple of professors that were like that, and you really had to be willing to stand your ground. And like the other students would assume that if you were Black and you are at UNCW, you are either there due to affirmative action or sports. They don't think it's anything academic. They always assume that you play a sport. Of course, I was too old to play a sport, so they assumed that I was just there because somebody felt sorry for me and gave me a chance. And I mean, I consider myself far more than reasonably intelligent, and
Right.
so it was. I kind of did some teaching of my own in class because I just really was not going to allow them to silence me. And I think that that's what this dissertation album is about. And I want to play, let me see if I can find I'm gonna try to share the intro, which is a remix of I Wish I Was in Dixie. And I'm gonna tell you, I don't know, it just blew my mind the way he was just very good at what he did. And he's a poet and a rapper. He used his words to really open up your eyes, because I don't have a problem with admitting that I didn't know just how bougie I was until recently. And I had this, I don't know, I attached a stigma to certain rap groups and certain rap music because the experience was not my experience. And so I didn't really value the experience until I started doing a little bit more, looking and trying to see what was going on. So I think it really helps to understand that, first of all, Black people are not a monolith. There's more than one way to be Black, And so I was just trying to figure out how that would relate to me in my life, kind of growing up being, you know, kind of sheltered. I didn't realize I was I really didn't realize I was sheltered, but I was. And so listening to like Trick Daddy, for instance, my husband loves Trick Daddy. And I'm like, you are not going to listen to that in my car. And we are not, and I'm all like that. And then he started telling me that this is the reality of his life. This is, these are things that he could relate to. And so I still don't like to listen to it, but I had to see that, people are different and people's lives are different. And, you know, I don't know. What do y'all think about that?
It's kind of ironic that you said what your dad said, as far as it that particular song or the lyrics in that song kind of resembled his life, because one of the things that AD Carson said in the write up that we were reading, he said, I really believe in the power of the lyric in words. And so, some people get offended and immediately they want to brush it away as far as the lyrics or the music, or but a lot of times if you take time to really listen to what they're saying, it is something, though it you may not necessarily say it in that way,
Mhm.
it's true, and it reflects the reality of where we are currently. And I just personally think, even though I'm not a hip hop person, but I think that music is so powerful, in the way that it can attach to someone, or the way that it can really pull out things in people. And I think it's something that's underestimated many times as far as music or even the lyrics. But it's powerful. It's powerful. I mean, biblically, I believe it's powerful, but in our day-to-day interactions, and the way that one person can hear a particular song and they ready to go gangster on somebody. That's because of the power of the lyrics that really moves people or compels people to be reactive and responsive.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna play this because it doesn't have the video, it's just the track. I'm gonna see if I can play it and you tell me if you can hear it, because y'all know I'll be trying. Can you hear it?
Somewhat.
Yeah, it's kind of choppy. I can't really.
Try muting yourself and see if that changes it. When I do Google meetings with my students, sometimes I have to mute myself.
Okay.
I can't make out anything.
Yeah, I can't either. Do you know what exactly are the lyrics in it? Do you know? Um,
You can't hear it?
no.
We
Okay.
can hear the
Well, that's
music,
fine.
but it's just
That's
very
fine.
muffled.
When you hear that song, Dixie, oh, I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. What is that? How does that affect you?
For me, being reared in the deep South, low country area, um, it just to me, whenever I heard that song, I laughed personally, because I'm like, I don't wish I was in Dixie. I don't want to be in Dixie, and you ain't taking me back to Dixie. That was, pretty much what I would, say as far as that song was concerned. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And it's ironic that you asked about that song, because my husband and I were looking, and I can't remember if it was BET or something, but they were playing Black History movies. And this one was about Medgar Evers. And the attorney, that was a song that he had sung initially to his daughter, who was afraid. She had gotten him up this particular night, and he was telling her there are no ghosts and everything like that. He said, but you know what my mama used to sing to me? And it really helped me and it really calmed me. And she said, well, what's the song? Well, he sang that song that first time. But then again, this another night afterwards, she woke him up again. And this was after he had his encounter with Medgar Evers' wife. And she said, Daddy, sing that song to me. And he said he was getting ready to, he opened up his mouth, but then he stopped and he said, you know what? Let's sing another song. And she was like, but you said it. He said, I know what I said. I know what I said, but I think there's one that's better. And he sang another song, you know. So a lot of times it's the experience to that song that really gets you to thinking about how true or how impactful that song can be. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until he had the experience of interacting with Medgar Evers' wife did now all of a sudden he change and say, you know what, this isn't the song. This isn't the right song.
Yeah. And it's so many people. Go ahead, Pia. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm kind of not necessarily indifferent to it. Growing up in the South, of course, when I think of Dixie, I immediately think of the Confederate flag and everything that's brought on with that, and the history behind it, and the blatant disregard for the full history of what that means. Because a lot of times when the argument is made in support of things like Dixie and the Confederate flag, they love to spout out, it's historic and the Confederate soldiers and the flag and all of that. And I get it. However, they fail to understand, but they lost though.
Exactly.
They lost. And we didn't see a resurgence of the flag. It went from being this flag of the Confederacy and their fight, ultimately, because it was about slavery, regardless of what they want to say, but this fight and the pride that they had for fighting for this ideal, so to speak. And that went away, right? And then we get into the civil rights era, and you see a re-emergence of it, and it takes on a new symbolism of hatred and racism. When, if I'm not mistaken, Bull Connor stands on the steps: segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And in significance of that, raises the flag. So this is no longer about Confederate soldiers anymore. You are now making this the symbol of the KKK.
Yes.
And that is the argument and the blind eye that our counterparts a lot of times don't even acknowledge nor care to mention, because at that point you have no argument anymore. So that's just how I feel about it.
And people always talk about its heritage, not hate, but it is a heritage of hate. It is a heritage of hate. And you can say whatever you want to say. You can say that the Civil War was about economics. Well, yeah, it was about the economics of having to pay people that you didn't have to pay anymore because you won't be free. I mean, it really is just, but I wanted to read a quote from the second track, and it says, "Stranger in unfriendly land, what I do is much deeper than a punchline. Move to the South, school in the morning, teach in the evening. Self-fulfilling politics get taught to you at school." Self-fulfilling politics. I remember when I was in the first grade, I went to segregated school in kindergarten. But then in first grade, I went to integrated school. Now, the first semester, there was so many fights and riots and stuff like that. And the little kids had to come home. They would tell us, don't get off the bus and all this kind of stuff. Well, in my class, we had to go to a school that was at the Baptist Assembly on Caswell Beach. So there was 2 Black girls in my class. I was one, and the other one was really, really quiet. Now, I'm in the first grade. I want to play with other kids, right? So they say, okay, we'll play this game, Wild Pig. Now, who you think was the wild pig? Me. And they would hit me with sticks and throw rocks and this kind of thing. And after a while, I realized that this ain't what I want to do. This ain't fun. So I'll just be by myself, and then they would do things like, can I touch your hair? And they would call me Zebra instead of Deirdre. They would call me, Zebra. That's what they would call me. So it was very interesting. And it was it was the rhetoric that kind of was ingrained in me that I didn't even realize. And so I got caught up in the politics of respectability, like trying to be acceptable to other people. My family was, we wasn't rich, but we was bougie. See, people think bougie is rich, but bougie ain't rich. It's not. And it was certain things that we don't do. We don't do this. We don't do that. We don't go out with a head rag on our head. We don't wear rollers in public. We don't, certain things like that. And I got caught up in that. And all I wanted to do was be accepted by the people who were never going to accept me. And so I had to find, and it took me a while, I had to finally accept the truth that they would always see me differently. And he talks about that. He says, what is it? If I know the truth, it's my duty to make revisions. And I think that this album was him making revisions to what we've been taught, the history, his story that is being taught in schools, and that people are trying to revise and calling enslaved people agricultural workers and all kinds of stuff like that in history books. And I think that we have to, sometimes you got to cuss people out to make them listen. That's basically what I'm learning about hip hop. How hip hop is, Jeremiah was cussing people out, wasn't he? Didn't Jeremiah cuss? Wasn't he a cussing prophet? You see? And I was so into this respectability thing that I just looked down at people who didn't express themselves in a grammatically correct manner, as I had always been taught, because I grew up in a family full of teachers. So, it's just that kind of thing that we have to understand, that there are people who are not afraid to revise the narrative. And I think that that's what A.D. Carson is doing with this, or has done with this dissertation. And he's got a couple of other he's got books, and he's got other mixtapes and things like that. And I just really started looking into it, because I was so impressed with the fact that he could be who he was, but still have a PhD. We get fooled into believing that if you're going to have a PhD, you can't, like, he's in his classroom, he got a beard, he got his fitted on, he got, his jeans, his t-shirt, and he's teaching the class. And you don't have to be something that you're not in order to make an impact. And then some of the things that I saw, the students in his class were talking about how it impacted them because they were able to hear somebody else's story instead of the narrative that they had always heard. Because there's people today, and this is why we had them folks running up there on the Capitol at January 6th, because they truly believe this faulty narrative, that these lies, these justifications that they had to use to be able to live with their cognitive dissonance, that people were being treated like animals. So they had to say, these aren't really people, these are animals. And then there's skewed science to kind of corroborate that. And there are young people right now who don't realize that all that stuff has been debunked, and they're finding it on the internet now, and they're being radicalized and things like that. So it's just, I think that the underlying message is that, and he has a quote, he uses a lot of quotes from a lot of giants in, in our culture, Malcolm X, and he talks about, what do you call a Black man with a BA and MS or PhD? They still call him a nigga. And I think that we can't talk about hip hop without talking about the N word, as they call it. We can't talk about hip hop without talking about that. I have a very interesting relationship with that word, because it's designed to dehumanize, but then we reclaimed it. And we use it in a different way, and it can mean very different things by the tone of your voice. And instead of me just rejecting altogether, the use of that word, I really had to figure out how to embrace the fact that I don't have to use it, but I don't have a right to condemn other people who do now. White folk ain't got no business using it. I don't. But reclaiming the symbols of our oppressors is what gives us, freedom. So what do y'all think about that? Reclaiming the symbols of our oppressors.
I think that's the beauty and the curse of being Black, right? It speaks to the creativity, the excellence, the chameleon-like mindset and tongue in which we have to walk, right? So there is this terminology, code switching, where we can be in a group amongst ourselves and we can talk that talk, whether it's jive or whether it's the slang, and we immediately know. But we can move into the boardroom and the vernacular changes with ease. We know how to make the switch. The curse in that is because Black people are so cool, so smooth with it, I get irritated because I live in this world where we can't have nothing without, after a while, here they come. I teach in a predominantly white school, and it irks my nerves to hear white boys coming down the hall, man, bruh, like, come on, bruh. And I'm just like, no, children, like, we can't have nothing. Miss Jessica, can you twerk? And it's just a group of white girls. I was like, we can't have nothing. And even understanding the history even behind twerking really has its connotation in African dance. So a lot of times, even as we kind of frown at it, but there are certain cultural and ritualistic dances, so if you were to see it in its purest form, and I'd be like, that's where they got twerking from, but it has a different meaning. It's kind of evolved once, we get a hold to it, but it's just like, just the beauty of what it is to be Black. That saying is they want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues.
Yes.
And everything that comes along with it, or why we had to come with our own means of communication and how we talk. That was a means of survival at one point in time, to be able to speak in a way that my sister gets it, or you and I, all three of us, can be in a room and we can give each other a look and have a full-blown conversation with the eyes. And white people be clueless, right? But they don't understand that. And they just see the cosmetic part of it, the coolness of it, so to speak, and want to take that. And it's just like, now we got to come up with something else because they're going to wear this out, that sort of thing. But I feel like hip hop has always been a way of escape, of expression for us. And so often people dismiss what they don't understand, because I grew up on the cusp of, NWA and what that was all about. And just being able to speak to your experience in a way that is poetic, in a way that is telling. So you have just a sheer form of expression to get out your thoughts, your feelings about what's going on, and speaking to the pulse of the community in which you're in, and all of that. So I think it's very important. And each form of hip hop has its own cultural identity. So.
Yeah, and I think hip hop is more than just music. It is culture. It is political culture. It is anthropology. It is all of these different things because we bad like that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try to share the screen to see if I can give you ladies this this video, because I wanted, okay, let's see. Share screen. Okay. La, 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 la. No, it's not gonna let me do it. Nope. Oh, wait. There we go. Yeah, share. Okay. Do y'all see it?
I see that you are starting to share.
That Black people are aggressive. Anything that they can use to undergird and pad that argument to justify that they were the aggressor, even though they are the ones who are now dead, opposed to that officer that used excessive force. We want to be able to justify that, you know, and just in water cooler talk, right? The question becomes, well, you know, he had to have done something.
Had to be something else. You
Something
haven't heard the whole story.
We don't know. We don't know what happened prior to, or they said, or to hear about Breonna Taylor. Well, she was with a drug dealer, and only to find out that the ex-boyfriend who was involved in that kind of lifestyle, they were so willing to try to find a way to justify her death. They try to offer the ex-boyfriend a deal. If you just give us her name to say that she was involved, we're going to cut you a lesser deal. And thank God, bro had a conscience to be like, I'm not doing that, because she was never involved in that life. Although that may have been what he did. Right. She was never directly involved with it. And obviously they end up going on their, you know, their separate ways, but they were trying everything to find a way to incriminate her. And all sis did was sleep. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it just infuriates me. And of course, you know, Sandra Bland. Yeah. You know, she was one of the most positive people in terms of even in her profession and what it meant to reach Black students and understanding who they were and being proud of who you are, and to see this narrative be flipped that she now has killed herself, like something doesn't even make sense. Yeah.
And it's just, it is, there's so many cases of this even before the internet. You know, I don't know if y'all saw, what was the name of that show? Thank God It's Friday. The guy, y'all, I'm a little bit older than y'all, so y'all might not have seen that. But the guy that played the DJ with Donna Summer in this movie, they were like a couple in the movie. He was traveling somewhere and he was killed and by police, and the same thing, he committed suicide in jail. You know, and I think it's just, it is, it's almost like there's a template that they use to defame and criminalize and animalize Black people, because then they can justify what happened. And I remember seeing when Trayvon was murdered, I remember seeing a picture of, you know, that rapper, The Game, or Game, whatever his name is. There was a picture going around that said, "This is the real Trayvon Martin." Like, cause you know, he had all the facial tattoos and he, you know, and he looked like a scary dude. So that's what they were trying to say, that was the real Trayvon Martin. So the narrative is always different. And I think Carson captured that very well in that poem, Just in Case. And I was just like, wow.
And also that speaks to Ryan Coogler's work with Fruitvale Station.
Yes.
And that scene where the dog is killed in the street. And I remember in a conversation that he had when he was being interviewed about the movie, but that particular scene, he was trying to parallel that with, that is the view of Black people in America to dehumanize us to be nothing more than this vicious animal,
Yep.
right? This, this shot that's put pit bull dead in the street. But it's so interesting though, right? That they want to dehumanize Black people sometimes as nothing more than this animal, this dog. But white folk love their pets, don't they?
Mm-hmm. But the other thing that's funny
You
is
know?
who has really perpetrated more crime against other races of people? Who has lynched and burned and cut up and skinned and boiled in oil and chopped off feet and drug behind Ford trucks and shot while somebody was just jogging, and a boy's walking home from the store with his Skittles and tea? And who is the one who has perpetrated all of that? It's not us. And I think that the reason why they do that is because they are afraid that if we ever get the chance to do them like they've done us, that we gonna do it. But see, we ain't even like that. So who's really the animals?
Well, I think that's the speech that Tamika Mallory gave when George Floyd was killed. And, she was saying, arrest the cops, arrest all the cops that were involved. The same for Breonna Taylor. Like this sense of violence, in the peak of that, the riots that begin to happen in response of that. And then here come people saying, oh, but you're destroying the city. Well, who did we learn that from? She says, we learned violence from you. We learned looting from you, but the victor, so to speak, are the one who writes the history book.
Yes.
So when this country was no more than colonized, the 13 colonies, and y'all mad over the price of some tea, it was okay for you to put on brown face and perpetrate being Indians, boarding a ship to loot and to destroy property of the queen or the king at the time. And we just dub it in our history books as the Boston Tea Party in the name of freedom.
Yes.
Right? But a Nat Turner or a Watts riot gets turned, or the 92 riot when Rodney King was beat unmercifully by those cops, and the world went ablaze. Then it's like, no. Or the fact that all y'all can do is just, it takes is to win a game.
Yeah.
And y'all tear a whole city down because you won a championship.
Yes.
But nobody said, and they will trash the city. And that made no sense to me because your city won. Yeah. So now let's go and burn the city down because we won the national championship. But we don't speak to those things.
No.
But when we do it,
a lot about, just fear, just overall fear. People are afraid of what they don't understand.
Yeah.
And, as a people, we are very strong in the fact that we've gone through hell and high water, but we're still here. We've gone through those struggles, those strains. We've gone through the point of not having anything, but yet we're able to come together as it was. I can't remember the city that they had the black town. They ended up raiding it, but where they came together and they prospered. You know what I'm saying? It's frustrating in seeing our strength.
Yeah.
How in our strength we'll flip on each other. If we would just come together, the things that we could do. But with people, and you were talking about code switching, that is so true because I'm from the Low Country. And so many times when you hear people from the Low Country, they have that Gullah talk or language. And it's nothing like, girl, I done told you, I tell you, I don't want to do that. I tell you that. You know what I'm saying? But then when, but my grandparents were teachers and assistant superintendents, and there was a way that we could be among each other, but a way that when we were out, we knew not to be. Yes. And so, a lot of times I come across people that'll say, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from a place called St. Stephen, South Carolina. Well, where is that? Oh, it's near Charleston, about an hour away from Charleston. And they're like, but you don't talk like you. And I'm like, well, how exactly am I supposed to talk?
Okay.
How exactly? And it's like, they're just like shocked and everything like that. But, just like you were saying, we can code switch and do it with ease. Right. We flow in it, and we know we've done it and do it so much that it becomes second nature to us. It's just like breathing. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to tell yourself, Tonya, breathe. No, you just know that depending on the environment, there's a particular way you need to behave, and it's second nature to you. Yeah, absolutely. But we can do that and do it in a way that will cause them to say, wow.
Because it's like breathing for us.
Yes.
You don't think about it. You know what I mean?
Because that's the way we continue to be able to breathe. Yeah. That's where it came from, because you had to be careful, and you would have to, as this lady said, Miss Cassie, you would have to take low. You would have to look down. You would have to do all these different things if you wanted to stay alive. And it's really a survival tactic.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. That made to the point of where, a lot of people, if we've lost if something happens and we lose everything, we know how to survive on some pork and beans and some grits, or make some homage or something. We know how to bring some stuff together to survive. But oftentimes, if a slight thing happens to them, it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and it's like, and oftentimes when I'm hearing that, I'm like, breathe. It's okay. You're gonna be all right.
But my sister had to survive on pie crust and barbecue sauce one time, okay?
Girl.
And you know what? But I lived, you see? Yeah. And I'm here today because I had to do what I had to do.
Exactly.
And I had that same conversation. It was so funny. I was talking with a coworker. It was one of us was Caucasian, and and another coworker walks in. She's Black, but we were just cutting up, and she was like, I'm gonna tell y'all something right now. She looked her dead in the face. If a famine come or some type of crisis hit for real, y'all gonna be pitiful. Y'all ain't gonna know what to do. Y'all not gonna survive, because Black folk know how to make $1 out of 15 cents. We were laughing, but we were dead serious. Like they don't know how to handle this crisis. And going back to what you were saying earlier, sis, about sometimes this need for survival and this frustration that we carry, and ultimately we begin to turn on each other. I thought about Chadwick Boseman's role and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Mm-hmm. And it speaks like enough is not said about August Wilson and his work as a playwright. Yeah. But that scene, where he turns on his brother but the frustration came from his rejection from the outside world. And sometimes that's what we do. We end up hurting the very people that we get our warmth from. And what is that? The African proverb, a child will burn a village down just to feel its warmth. When we are not accepted, sometimes we will turn on each other. And that is the sad part, rather than unifying and galvanizing that frustration and putting it together for a common goal. But it happens so often. And to an earlier point, Deidre, that you were speaking of about, the lyric about the education of the politics and things. I often find myself, even as a teacher, trying to correct some things that our children are being taught. And again, being a predominantly white school, you get these questions and you're seeing where the kids are getting it from, because they're just spewing out and regurgitating what they hear their parents say. Because, you know, it's Black History Month. I have a Black child in my classroom February 1st. And I walk in, happy Black History Month. And I made it a purpose that you're going to learn about someone of color, African American, who contributed to the field of science, was an inventor. You're going to do a report. So you go find one. No, you can't do Martin Luther King, you know, because that's the one person that all white people know, or Rosa Parks. No, dig deep and find something. And March is Women's History Month. And even though Rosalind Franklin was not Black, I made a point to say it was her that discovered the double helix, but Watson and Crick, because of her partner who stole the information from her and gave it to them, they end up getting the award for it. And, you know, talking about, you know, the ethics behind science and why we do the things that we do. And someone saying, well, you know, well, why didn't they give her credit? And I was like, you know, this is what people did. They stole. Sometimes I said it also speaks to sometimes African Americans didn't get credit. And I had a student put in the chat on my Google meeting, well, Black History Month is over. And during Black History Month, I had a student say, well, why do y'all get a whole month? White people don't get a month.
You get every day, baby, don't you?
I'm just like, well, y'all are celebrated all the time. But having to really, and here goes the code switching, because sometimes you never know what parent is listening in. So I can't come off as being angry, because I really want to be like, you little, come here, come here. You know, I have to put it in a way that I'm educating them and helping them rethink about their thought process, so they can come to an understanding why we celebrate all kinds of people, all kinds of cultures, and the importance behind it. And I had a young man say today, young white man in my class, he says, so I feel like school has lied to us. She did this. She should be mentioned. Lewis Latimer helped Thomas Edison. Why don't they tell us this? And that's the moment that you feel like, I've done my job.
Yes.
You know, so.
Yeah. But I think with A.D. Carson too, when I was reading the article that was written about him, when it was talking about the hip hop music and some of the lyrics, because he was saying that there's some language in some of the pieces that he chose, but even with that, he had to kind of measure what exactly to use versus what not to use, because to get the overall picture out, you know, as far as the meaning or what he was trying to express. And there was another thing that he said too, and that I liked. He said, I wanted to present a voice rather than writing about a voice. I wanted to present a voice versus writing about a voice, because you can write your stories. You can, and they can be good. They can, you know, be impactful. But when you actually hear the voice, when the person is actually there speaking, you know, that brings a whole different, you know, connotation to what you're trying to convey, the message that you're trying to convey. I saw what was her name? Ten Boom. Miss Ten Boom. Yes. She there was a class that actually the teacher had played the story about what she and her family had done. And they the kids wanted to actually meet her.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in the United States, and they raised money to get her to come. She came, and she sat there and she talked to them about what her experience was, you know. But even hearing the comments of the kids, yes, they read the story, yes, they saw the movie,
Mm-hmm.
yes, they had their opinions or their thoughts, but actually having her there to hear it,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
that brought a whole different meaning
Yeah.
to them. And so, you know, when I thought about that in relation to, you know, this was something that was never done before, his dissertation, the method that he used. But this bruh had it going on, because I mean, even in his apartment, he turned it into a little mini studio.
Yes. It
I
was.
mean, the picture that you saw as far as the equipment and everything that he had that brought, you know, to be able to produce this kind of work. But you know, and he even gave credit to the school and supporting him. But you know, he had some you know, people that probably tried to talk him out of it at the very beginning, not really quite understanding, especially being that this was never done before.
Right.
But he still, despite everything, pursued it and did it in his way, how he wanted to do it. And look, I mean, and just seeing how even before it was actually before he even had to do his dissertation, it was talking about how even with the songs and stuff that he had put together, how many hits that he had already
Went
gained.
viral before he even defended his dissertation.
Right.
Yeah.
Before he even did that. And so it's just I just, it was just amazing just reading
Mm-hmm.
reading that, and just, you know, just to turn seeing how strong, and then to read too, he was the first out of all of his brothers and sisters to go to college,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And look at what he did.
To that in itself speaks a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, he didn't just get, you know, his
Mm-hmm.
bachelor's. I mean, he went and got his master's. Now he's getting his, you know, his doctorate.
Now
I
he's
mean,
Dr.
that,
A.D. Carson.
yeah. So, you know, that just reflects his tenacity, and
And the resilience of our people.
that's right.
That's the real thing. But listen, ladies, it's after 7, and you know I try to respect your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. If you are listening to this, I would suggest that you find the dissertation of A.D. Carson. It's 34 tracks, but I'm trying to tell you, you will be glad you listened to it. It really kind of encouraged me to speak my truth unapologetically. So, you know. So, all right, ladies, thank you so much once again. I'm going to go ahead and end this. Oh, we made hoodlines, guys. We were in hoodlines. Yeah. They talked
Awesome.
about our little thing, and people are subscribing. So listen, if you're watching this, subscribe, and we'll be talking about all kinds of stuff because we're opinionated and we want to talk about stuff. So, okay. Now, just remember that you can eat the entire world one bite at a time. Okay. All right, ladies. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.
Hey, are we going to discuss